Welcome back. Call it the price of doing nothing. The lime pits in Venice aren't new. They have been there for about 60 years, a remnant from the days when they were used at a water treatment plant. So what to do now? The city needs more public park space. While the city council has studied and debated a course of action, the price of removing the lime has steadily increased to an estimated $3 million and counting. Joining us for more is Venice Mayor John Hollick, our very own Christopher Brantley in the Show and Tell.
Yes.
And joining us by Skype is Glenn Compton, chairman of Minnesota 88. He has been following this issue for around 3 decades. Glenn, thank you very much for joining us. And Mayor, let me start with you to put it into context. The water treatment facility is someplace else, but a lot of communities have places where they have to dump the lime that was used in the water sewage process.
The process of lime softening was very common early in Florida in the early 1900s. And lime would be brought in, taken to the water treatment plant. Water would be passed through the lime. Chemical combinations would take place. And the byproduct, a calcium carbonate and a magnesium hydrosulfide, I believe, that's what was left over.
Now, we are saying that, look, we put lime on our lawns. It's good for that. The lime here is, as was in Christopher's story, a little bit more concentrated than what you normally would put on your lawn. But, do we have concerns, Glenn, that there may be other contaminants in this lime that may make it unsafe for the general public to be around?
Well, there are other contaminants in the lime. It's not a
totally clean.
Water would pass through it. The water would have different properties in it, some of it bacteria, and the lime was a good bacteria trapper as well as the softening water.
Right, and I wanted to pose that question to Glenn. I mean, obviously there are other contaminants. Do you feel, Glenn, that it poses a general risk to the public?
Well, it's certainly not something that you want to be playing on or through at any time. Lime just by itself is a skin irritant, it's an eye irritant, and it can be an upper respiratory irritant. So if it's nothing more than just a bunch of lime, that's reason enough to get rid of it. But this is not lime that we have as limestone under the ground in the state of Florida. This is something that was used as a wastewater treatment facility, and unless you know what you're testing for, you really don't know what else is in it. It could contain organics, it could contain higher levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, definitely phenols could be present, and all of these could constitute an environmental hazard.
Now, Glenn, you say that you think that the best course of action is to remove the lime pits, but as we also saw in Christopher's story, there are turtles there. So there is wildlife on the area. How do you remove it and not disturb the turtles and other wildlife that are there?
The alternative that the city has decided to go with has been done after consultation with Fish and Game Commission, and they're recommending putting silt fences between the construction and the existing gopher tortoises, which is appropriate. There will have to be some relocation, obviously, because of the number of gopher tortoises that are out there. But it's more desirable to try to leave the gopher tortoises where they're at than to try to relocate them.
And Chris, we only have less than a minute left, but just how popular is this area, the park outside it, and the need in Venice for more park space?
Shy of downtown, I think Wellfield Park might be one of the most popular places in the city, because you have football fields, you have soccer fields, you have baseball fields. You have walking trails that are all right along where these lime pits are. So I think this place is incredibly popular, and the removal of the lime pits would certainly add to the area.
Okay, our discussion is just getting started when we pick up the conversation right after the check on our weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing Venice's lime pits. They have been left untouched at Westfield Park for more than half a century. The price tag to remove them continues to increase. What should be done? Our guest tonight are Mayor John Hollick of Venice, ABC 7 South County reporter Christopher Brantley, and joining us by Skype is Glenn Compton, chairman of Minnesota 88. And Glenn, I'm going to go back to you. Why do you think that these lime pits should be removed, and what is your view that they have not been removed before now?
Well, the reason they haven't been removed is probably because of the cost involved, which is unfortunate because we first made recommendations to have them completely removed 20 years ago. And if it had been done 20 years ago, the cost would have been much less than it is now. One of the council members had suggested that all they were doing was kicking it down the road for future generations to deal with, and I agree with that. So I commend the current city council to look at this, and someone made the mess. The city of Venice made the mess, and they should clean their mess up. And now's a good time to do so.
Mayor, I can't ask you to speak for city, councils going back decades and decades, but obviously was this a miscalculation?
Well, I think part of it is a miscalculation, but part of it is a lack of knowledge. No one really knew what the lime pits would cause down the road, what problems would be caused down the road either. Much like 50 years ago, cigarettes were thought to, the only harmful effect was stunting growth.
Right. Now, what we're seeing now is the steady increase in the cost in terms of removing it, now over $3 million. But you told us during the break that there may have been a cost-free alternative several years ago that, for whatever reason, was not taken advantage of.
That's correct. About 4 or 5 years ago, a group called Challenger Baseball wanted to put a baseball field right over the lime pits, and had, as part of their incentive for us to give them the okay, would have removed the lime pits free of charge. It would have been their cost. They would have borne the cost for it. However, the residents of Venice decided that leaving the park in a natural state was more advantageous than putting a baseball field in there, and formed a group called Friends of Pinebrook Park. And they're very adamantly opposed to any changes in the park, and we are trying to follow the will of that group of people.
Glenn, I would imagine as an environmentalist, you want areas restored to their natural beauty. I don't know if a ballpark does that, but what is your view of the citizens group that in the name of preserving the area, did not take advantage of the offer to remove the lime from the park?
Well, certainly a ballpark does not do much for preservation of the environment. The area is a very nice area. It's pine flatwoods, and it's home to many different species, and it would be appropriate to try to restore it after the lime has been removed. Certainly people that live adjacent to the park would rather see it as a preserve than as a baseball field, because it would be less disruptive to their lifestyle. But this is an area that has a lot of potential environmentally, and it can be restored. It's just a matter of getting rid of the lime first.
But we need our open areas, but Christopher, we also need our ball fields, because this is a growing area, and there is a shortage all around from Naples to Tallahassee of ball fields to handle whether it's baseball, soccer, or whatever. Talk about the need for this, and that Venice needs more open park space.
So the one thing that Venice does not have is, as you said, open space. When you can only build so much before there's nowhere else to build something brand new from the ground up. So a lot of the people I talked to for this story said, this is a large area that is completely closed off. It's got gates up there, there are big fences up, and if all of this lime was removed, it would open a whole lot of new space for something new to be built. Now, right next door are a bunch of ball fields. They are packed every day, just about. Do we need more ball fields? Well, I'm sure that can be argued. We do need more, and I'm sure there will be arguments that we don't need any more. But one thing that is absolutely certain is there isn't much space to build something new.
Mayor, could you give this the proper context? Because I asked you before the show, why wasn't this material dumped elsewhere, farther away from the community? And the answer is interestingly simplistic.
It is interesting simplistic. That was the outskirts of Venice when it was dumped. We didn't start using lime in our water system until about 1954. And if you go back in the history of Venice, 1945, the war ended. We had an airport and a lot of open space. In 1945, when the war ended, Venice was only using 14,000 gallons of water a day. Now we're using upwards of 2 million a day. The initial lime softening was done on shallow wells. We don't use shallow wells anymore. They're just way too smelly from hydrogen sulfide. But this was the outskirts of Venice. It was on the very, very outskirts of the city.
Glenn, this is a common problem. I mean, there are a lot of these lime pits around the Suncoast and around Florida. Are any other communities handling this or moving on it in a unique way that is friendlier environmentally and also just takes care of the issue?
Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean it's not happening someplace else. But the mayor's correct. This is a historic mistake, and it should be cleaned up. And they're not making any more land, and land that could be set aside as preservation in an urban surrounding area is very valuable, not only for the residents nearby, but also for the wildlife and the habitat that it would provide. For the wildlife that really is becoming less and less in the city of Venice.
And Christopher, we only have a few minutes left, but that is the rub, you know, restoring it or building it to suit the community of today.
Absolutely. And Glenn, I have a question for you. If the city goes in there to remove all of this lime, what could they do with it? Is there any other use for it, really?
Contractors will probably come in with bids, hopefully with alternative uses for it. In my opinion, the best solution would be to landfill it.
Okay. Let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic, historically black colleges and universities. Welcome back. After 6 decades, we could finally see the removal of burying of the Venice lime pits. Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Glenn, let me start with you, because you've been following this for years. There are a number of options on the table. We know you want the lime pits removed. You know, make your case to the people who are watching this tonight why that is an option that needs to be taken advantage of soon.
The longer we wait, the more expensive it will be. And there's no guarantee that someone in the future is going to tell the city of Venice that they have to remove the lime because it has a potential to be an environmental hazard, and it's certainly a human health hazard as it exists today because of the fencing that's around it. I would like to see the city commit to not only removing the lime, but also commit to rezoning the property so that it's used for conservation purposes in the future. Because I'm sure that there'll be a lot of debate as to what to use the land for once the lime is removed.
Well, there are two issues there. Will the city commit to removing the lime, and B, committing to restoring the area to its national habitat, or using it for park purposes?
I think the answer to both questions is yes. I think there's enough sentiment on council now to come up with a new zoning category of preserve or preservation area, and Pine Brook Park would be the first.
So no ball fields or recreational facilities right in that area?
No, even though there have been some on the drawing board. I have a drawing in my office dating back to 1985 where they were going to add additional amenities to the park. I don't think that's the sentiment of the people now, and if you go out there you could see why.
Chris, what do people tell you in terms of what they want?
Very much split. Everybody wants it gone, but you know, half of the people want a new ball field and half the people want it to be preserved. You know, being out there, you know, obviously no one can get there, and it's much larger than it really comes across on the camera. But this is a huge area, and a lot of those people who want it gone say, no matter what you do, this is a massive piece of Venice that could be opened.
Right, we'll have to leave it there, and I'm wondering what you're going to do with this after the show.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's not going to get anywhere near me, though.
Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic, historically black colleges and universities. President Trump signed an executive order transferring oversight of the institutions from the Department of Education directly to the White House. He is also maintaining $500 million in funding for the schools in his proposed budget. Florida is home to 4 of these schools, and here's what some of you are saying. Michael Silvestri writes, HBCU HBCUs are still serve an important role. Education and opportunity are at the center of the American dream. These schools offer an avenue to success that otherwise might be closed. And Billy Brooks Jr. writes, no such thing as an all-black college. Anyone could attend a historic black university. So what do you want to see done with the lime pits, and who should pay for them? Join the conversation by joining our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Mayor John Hollick of Venice, ABC 7 South County reporter Christopher Brantley, and Glenn Compton, chairman of Manasota 88. He joined us tonight by Skype.